Hey guys, Nick here at PAX Prime 2014, and I just got hands-on with Below, the new procedurally generated dungeon crawling super dark game from Capy. Now you might know Capy as the creators of Super Time Force, Critter Crunch, Super Brothers Sword and Sorcery is another great example, and all of their games I've noticed are very, very different, and this is no exception. I think the first thing that stands out to me is the fact that it is just completely and utterly gorgeous. I think if you've seen footage of this game, you know that it's very, very sparse, very quiet, really great depth of field. But this is the first time I've ever gotten to see what it's like to actually play it, and it's hard not to be reductive and make the obvious Dark Souls comparison, but there is obviously a little bit of that there. You start out with a sword and a shield, and the entire game is very, very dark. So these big, wide, very, very broad shots of these huge empty rooms. You can light up these rooms either using a lamp that has a limited amount of oil or a torch. And by pulling out the torch, by pressing up on the D-pad, you get a much better visibility and light, but you put away your shield, which probably sounds familiar to anyone who's played Dark Souls. But I think that it's a little reductive to compare it to Dark Souls because it is so different. Like obviously randomly generated levels, which is crazy. It does not look randomly generated at all. Everything looks and feels very handcrafted, like deceptively so, to the point that it's almost hard to believe that any of this is being made algorithmically, but it is. I went through a couple of runs. It is a game where when you die, it starts over, but interestingly, when you die and it starts over, everything changes. So you're not going through the exact same area as the first time through. I found a few weapons on my runs. I found sort of a pike. You can just tap Y to change that at any time. But I died, lost it, and then didn't get a ton of experience with it. I also found a bow and arrow. And the whole game uses very traditional sort of left stick to move, right stick to orient yourself, dual joystick style controls. Right trigger is swing, left trigger is shield, and then you can switch your light source with the left bumper on and off. It's hard to sort of articulate what's most interesting to me about this game, which is the atmosphere that it creates. They've got Jim Guthrie doing the music again, the guy who did the music on Sword and Sorcery, and its vibe is just so subtle and quiet and dark, and it makes you feel tense, it makes you apprehensive, and it makes you want to be cautious, not unlike the way that Miyazaki's Souls games do. Yeah, it's hard, I guess, but more importantly, it's a world that I really am curious about and I want to spend time with. They tell you very, very little. There's a crafting system that you have to figure out yourself just by grabbing items out of your inventory and bumping them into each other. One interesting thing, too, is that I got poisoned at one point on my final run, and I was trying to really quickly craft an antidote, which I didn't know how to craft. So there was an enemy near me, my health was super low, I was out of potions, so I ran through a staircase to go to the next room, and what kind of blew me away was I opened up my inventory when I got to that room, and a few seconds later I noticed that the big enemy who I was running from had followed me into the next room, which you never ever see in these sort of single screen games, which is just a great example of how this game is all about apprehension and caution and never feeling totally 100% safe. It's not coming out till 2015. It's going to Xbox One and PC, and it's a game that it's one of those games that I just kind of want to throw myself into fully, not look at anything on the internet, and try to figure out as much as possible on my own just from beating against it, banging my head against it, and dying over and over and over. Really, really intriguing, super subtle, very weird stuff, and a huge departure from Capy, but a very, very exciting one. I can't wait to see more of it when it comes out next year. Bye. Fields are semi-transparent, and actually anywhere where there are enemies, like around the side of an orb, let's say it's a spherical stage, the level kind of indents, so you can kind of see at a glance in your periphery where the enemies are lined up. They've made a bunch of changes to it. The first big structural change is that it's sort of a campaign adventure mode type thing. So